Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. Here we are in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, on a special podcast. We've got Maureen Bannon back in studio for episode number 150, October 10th, 7:30 p.m. Good evening, Tanner. That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're having a little trouble with the board today. We're going to see how things go. We're going to fight our way through it. Maureen, it's good to have you here. Good day to you.
Thank you for having me back, especially after my last podcast with you. I thought you would put the
kibosh?
yeah,
No way.
kaput.
No. No way.
I know.
Yeah, we didn't get a strike. It was great.
Well, we definitely wouldn't on Rumble, that's for sure.
I thought we were pushing the edge. I think our great producer, Mr. Tanner, intervened slightly, though, on the YouTube version.
Yes.
Can you know what happened on YouTube? I'm getting these things that, our audience has been growing just regularly on YouTube. We've got a lot of people we really enjoy seeing come back regular to the podcast. And I keep getting these things. I can't monetize the podcast because, of course, we're trying to sell tires and we don't really care about, why YouTube wouldn't let us monetize. We use a lot of clips.
Mm-hmm.
There's copyright issues. The people that own the copyright said we can use them on YouTube, but then they're monetizing and we're not. And I keep getting these, and I think YouTube ran out of patience. I think I'm being severely suppressed these days. Now, Royce thought it was because I'm a boomer that's not buying the program. He said I'm a very dangerous person. I think it's a money issue. I think YouTube just would like me to be more compliant in their money-making strategy, right?
Yeah.
It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem. However, when you're here and we go up on the War Room channels,
what can I say?
It's very helpful for the Professor Penn. Very helpful. Hey, we're on the YouTube. We premiere on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now I'm going to get this out of the way. The Professor Penn podcast premieres Tuesdays and Thursday nights at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're very happy to hear you, have you here with us today. And we talked a little bit about some things to go over in this podcast, something we've never done before. Our last two podcasts were completely spontaneous. This is pretty spontaneous. However, we do want to talk about this natural disaster, hurricane. What was the name of that hurricane?
Helene.
I'm going to turn this over to you. I'm going to let you inform my listeners, and you're going to get a chance, of course, the War Room audience. I mean, this is a big deal. And I want to say before I start, if you're looking at the mainstream media, there's really not a lot to be seen about this issue. So I'm looking forward to being informed.
So Hurricane Helene made landfall on Thursday, September 26th. It hit the Big Bend of Florida, which is that corner part between where Tallahassee and the Panhandle is, and then where, St. Pete, Clearwater, that area. So Big Bend is further north of St. Pete and Clearwater and east of the Panhandle. So it hit there on Thursday, September 26th, and then worked its way up through Georgia, eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, and the southern tip of Virginia. And with all the research and videos that I've seen of the devastation that Hurricane Helene caused in the Appalachian Mountain or Appalachia, there have been viewers of these videos that have commented, how could you not evacuate? How could you not prepare for this? Why didn't you? Basically blaming the victims for what happened to them. And I want to make it very clear. In western North Carolina and the Appalachia area, you don't expect a Category 2+ hurricane to hit you. When it made landfall in Florida, I believe it was a Category 3 hurricane, if not 4. And, and I said this on Special Report when I was on Special Report right after the hurricane hit, or that Monday following when it hit. I said, in Florida, You never expect the devastation a hurricane causes. No one can ever really prepare you for that. However, in Florida, we understand that hurricanes will hit us. In western North Carolina, eastern Tennessee, southern Virginia, you don't expect a hurricane to hit you, especially a hurricane that strong to hit you. And the fact that when it hit them, especially western North Carolina, I believe it was 2 a.m., you don't expect the devastation, the mudslides that ensue from that to occur. So to blame the victims is absolutely disgusting. And the fact that the media is trying to downplay the devastation that was caused. You don't hear accurate fatality reports. The media is reporting 200 plus deaths that have been caused by Hurricane Helene. I'm seeing reports of at least 500 just in western North Carolina.
Wow.
And that's not that, and that's only, a certain area requesting 500 body bags and having to use those. And there's been requests of more body bags. There's at least 1,000, if not more, people missing just in western North Carolina alone. And the fact that the government is saying we're doing all we can, the fact that Kamala Harris got up and said, "Oh, we're going to give you $750, but you have to apply for it." And then when people are going to apply for it, they're being turned away because they have no form of identification because it got swept away in the hurricane.
She appeared there, didn't she? Didn't she go into the
No,
region?
she did not go into the region. She didn't go into, let me correct myself, Appalachia. She went into Florida that was also hit by the hurricane and made that statement.
So when
Joe
she was
Biden stopped in the area on his way to Raleigh. That didn't make that the final stop. You had to do a touchdown in western North Carolina before you go on to Raleigh. And the fact that when he was asked at the White House later that day about the storm victims, he responded, "What storm?" And then proceeded to say, "Oh, they're very happy. They're getting all that they need." They're not happy. I've seen numerous accounts and videos of survivors that are saying, "Where is the government? What are they doing?" It took them 5 or 6 days to respond. Well, President Trump was in Georgia, an area in Georgia that was devastated within a day or two.
I'm a little bit confused about how this is all supposed to work,
Mhm.
in the sense that in Florida,
Mhm.
it seems Governor Ron DeSantis
Mhm.
gets a lot of credit and takes a lot of credit for emergency management. Is that a fact or is that a
It
misperception?
it is, and he declared a state of emergency in 41 out of the 56 counties in Florida prior to Hurricane Helene making landfall.
So does that mean he had good state management of the
I
disaster
I per
in Florida?
I personally believe so, yes, and the fact that afterwards, it wasn't, it didn't take him days to get involved, and he even said in a presser shortly after the devastation occurred in Florida from Hurricane Helene, the federal government needs to focus on the other areas that were devastated. We in Florida can handle this.
Well, if his stewardship as the governor is very important in Florida,
Mhm.
what's going on in North Carolina?
Well, I would like to see Governor Cooper actually seem to care about his residents. It doesn't seem that way to me. And once again, to all your viewers and to the War Room posse watching this, these are my opinions. Not everyone will agree with my opinions, but I don't think that Governor Cooper is doing enough for his residents.
Wow, that's
Eh, I mean, I went on Twitter. I I went and researched every single Air National Guard unit that had a rescue squadron, and I posted on Twitter, tagging the governors of those states where they are stationed and President Biden. I mean, I didn't tag the POTUS account because I don't respect him, the president, so I tagged at Joe Biden. But you have at least, if I remember correctly, 10 rescue squadron Air National Guard units. Why haven't they been mobilized? So for National Guard, you have to put them on orders. So if it's within like that state, the governor can request the president to activate them. Or the president doesn't even need the governor's permission. In all honesty, he can request that they be put on Title 10, so active duty orders, and then deployed to where they are needed. So the fact that I haven't seen any reports that these Air National Guard units, the rescue squadrons, have been deployed to help search and rescue, and they have equipment that is meant for combat search and rescue. And given what I have seen, it looks like a combat zone in Western North Carolina. I mean, you and I discussed this. I have a friend that lives there. I didn't know for 6 days if he was dead or alive.
But thank God he turned up.
Yes, he did.
That was very great. We enjoyed that. I guess what I'm hearing you say, and I want to make sure, and we don't know certainly about this, but there could be an element. The implication is there's an element of politics involved in this response.
Yes, and I mean, firsthand accounts, FEMA and the federal government are trying to block resources to go in to certain areas, saying they have it handled. You don't have it handled. It shouldn't take private citizens trying to rescue their own. It should not come to that. The federal government should actually do their job. But the fact that they gave FEMA funds $101 billion, $100.01 billion to illegal immigrants. And now FEMA's coming out and saying we don't have enough funds to last through the end of hurricane season, which is November 30th, is disgusting. So if this doesn't show, and I know President Trump said he's not in those areas because someone asked, well, what about voters? It's not about voters. It's about people's lives. And I very much respect that answer. For the rest of the country, if this does not open your eyes to if Kamala Harris occupies the White House, if somehow she cheats her way in, or I don't think she'll ever be voted in, but this is what will happen if there's more devastation in this country, if there's another natural disaster. She does not care. She's America last. She does not care about the citizens of this country. President Trump was boots on ground trying to help hurricane victims within a day of the hurricane causing destruction in those areas. He raised millions of dollars to help hurricane victims. And we think that it's okay to give a victim $750 to rebuild their entire life, but we'll just go give illegal immigrants thousands of dollars. Let's send more money over to Ukraine while we're at it, and Israel.
I think I read
and
that.
Lebanon.
That's an interesting one. We talked about that for a minute yesterday. What was that, 157 million?
Yes. And don't get me wrong, I agree with support of Israel. I think that we need to take care of American citizens
we're
first.
Talking about Lebanon.
Well, I know, but I just want to address that comment. But yes,
That's a completely different issue.
But Lebanon, we sent Secretary Blinken posted that we are going to send $157 million over as humanitarian aid.
Sounds great, doesn't it?
To Lebanon.
Sounds fantastic.
And hold on, let me see if I can pull up that lovely tweet that he did.
Well, it's as American citizens, particularly the boomer generation, we've been hearing about this foreign aid in a positive light since the Peace Corps. There was a predicate set in the Kennedy administration that we're doing all these good works.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very religious of us in a way, spiritual after all.
So Secretary Blinken, The U.S. is at the forefront of humanitarian response to the growing crisis in Lebanon, announcing nearly $157 million in assistance today. We are committed to supporting those in need and delivering essential aid to displaced civilians, refugees, and the communities hosting them.
You know, it sounds to me, again, this is my opinion.
Mhm.
My opinion.
Mhm.
Foreign aid is looking more and more to me like having people on the payroll so they do your bidding.
Mhm.
You know, like they just gave 1.3 billion to the El Sisi regime in Egypt. I mean, yes, go ahead.
But the biggest issue I have with this, besides the amount,
Yeah.
well, one, that is going to a foreign country and not our own citizens, but the fact that he said, "We are committed to supporting those in need and delivering essential aid to displaced civilians, refugees, and the communities hosting them." What about the displaced civilians in this country? You don't give a about the residents of the United States of America. It's blatantly clear. So, if this doesn't
I'm gonna give you an alternative
Mhm.
reality. Here's an alternative reality.
You just messed up my
No, it's an alternative. I'm trying
just
to get my,
kidding.
Blinken was out on the East Coast not that long after I was there.
Mhm.
And I think the mind thought, the through line is something like this. Democracy. Demo- this is my opinion. Democracy is so important. It can't just be left to these muddy people that are clinging to their Bibles and their guns. I mean, democracy, it's institutions, it's very important.
Mhm.
And God forbid there was a conflagration in the Middle East as an October surprise and things spun out of control. And suddenly someone said to themselves, my God, these people are incompetent on foreign policy. I think I have to vote for peace and vote for Royce White or vote for Donald Trump. So what they do is they go, how are we going to manage this? Let's send $157 million over to Hezbollah because that's what Lebanon is. It's, I mean, it might not have gone right to Hezbollah, but they're definitely going to get benefits from the deal, right?
Mhm.
So it makes them stronger, makes them look better. That money's going to somebody who has to disperse it. It's the Middle East. There's carrying charges. Somebody's getting paid off. That's my opinion. That's how I look at it. So what they're doing is they're quelling the conflict to get it onto the other side of the election. Even the Israelis, and this really blew my mind, their response on this Iranian attack was going to be calibrated to take into account the November election. I'm thinking to myself, that's a very strange thing for a foreign government to say. Their foreign policy and their war policy is being crafted based on the domestic audience in the United States that's funding their military adventure.
Mhm.
This stuff is a little bit strange. It's a little strange. I don't know for sure, but if in fact we're letting American citizens suffer and our priority is to keep, as a government, is to keep a conflagration from breaking out in the Middle East, I think their thinking is they're just so much better for the country than us dirty nationalists. They have to win, right? By any means possible. And that's the politicalization of our basic governmental functions.
Well, they're just showing that they're America last. They've been doing this for years. I mean, let's take into account what happened in Lahaina and on Maui. They gave those residents that had their entire lives destroyed, burned, their houses burned to the ground. They gave them or $750 to rebuild their entire lives. And when I was out in Maui, in May, this past May, I went up to Lahaina with Nolan and Sherry Chong, who had sorry, Nolan and and Sherry Chang. Um, getting I used Grace's last name in there. Anyways, Nolan and Sherry took me up to Lahaina from where we were all staying, and I got to see the devastation firsthand a year later, or almost a year later. and $750 to rebuild everything is not enough. There were people that had built tent homes on the beach because they couldn't afford
American
to.
citizens.
Yes.
But at the end of the
And
Ukraine war,
mind you, we sent more money over to Ukraine right around the time
oh,
I was in Hawaii seeing this, and it wasn't just one tent. It was like they had put multiple tents together with tarps over top because it wasn't just 1 or 2 people. It was their entire family.
I didn't verify this. And, when I see things on X, I worry about the data, if I don't verify. But somebody posted that the amount of foreign aid that it's gone to the Ukraine has been like $5,000 per Ukrainian citizen.
I believe that.
I mean, we got hundreds of billions of dollars.
Well, you get to come across our open southern border. Come right across. Don't worry about it. We'll just give you a couple $1,000s. But oh wait, if you were born in the United States and an American citizen and you saw your house swept away, $750. Good luck. Rebuild. Like, it reeks of I'm so disgusted I can't even put words together.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
actually angry about this.
100%, especially since I have friends that live in those areas, not just my friend in North Carolina. I mean, I was stationed in Kentucky, the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. I have friends that live in Eastern Tennessee. I have friends that live in Georgia. I know people that had to flee Georgia up to the Midwest because they were so scared of the destruction that could be caused, and then come to find out destruction occurred where they are. I mean, where they
We were
where they
walking.
live.
We were at brunch yesterday, and we were walking out of brunch. I looked at Maureen and I said, the corruption is so deep, it's so pervasive, and it's in everybody, every institution, every religion. It's just really kind of a spiritual process now to reclaim, because this is the basic function of government, right? Defend the citizens. And if there's a disaster, we as neighbors are going to go. I mean, this goes back to the idea of neighborliness, that there's any politics in this, that there's any fault on this would seem, I don't like to use the word should, but it would seem to be the core function of our domestic governance, right? Am I
Well,
right or wrong?
you're right, and if you had any ounce of decency in you as a human, you would do whatever you can to help those
In need.
that have been devastated. I mean, I had friends in Florida. It hit in the Big Bend of Florida, but the surge occurred all the way down into my county in Florida, which happens to be on the Gulf Coast
I
of
mean, this
Florida.
is really a
And
human well-being issue.
and
It's an issue of citizen well-being.
and I have friends that lost everything. Everything.
It's the polarity of the people who are
Mhm.
governing us. If they make every decision based on the well-being of the citizens, or if they make every decision based on some kind of global enterprise that they've got put together,
Mhm.
it's two completely and almost exclusive ideas. And that's what we're trying to do in the movement. We're just saying this, however well-intentioned it may have been in 1946, how this thing is developed is that we're sitting here in 2024 and human well-being seems to be not very important to the people that govern us.
Mhm. And it shows you what type of people they are and their character. They have none. If you think that Kamala Harris actually cares about the citizens of this country, you're wrong. You're an idiot. Straight up, I'm not
What
mincing
do
my
you think?
words.
What do you
You're
think
an
she?
idiot.
What
If
do you
you
think?
vote for her in office, you're an idiot.
What do you think she cares about? What do you think is her concern? Your opinion about it?
Herself. I don't think she cares. And foreign countries that can line her pocket. I know she distanced is herself. Clearly, I'm so upset. I can't even talk right. So, Joe Biden clearly is has no character and no morals. Um, and I believe that we're continuing to fund foreign countries that he has some back dealings with that is lining his pockets. Now, don't come for me because I don't have the receipts to show on this podcast, but I think that Kamala has some other dealings. Like, why would we continue to send money to foreign countries instead of taking care of our own? And she claims that she is about women. If you were really about women, you wouldn't have forced an experimental, and I know I can say this because it's going up on Rumble, an experimental
vacuum
that can cause
infertility.
If you really cared about, but you care about a woman's right to choose because you are okay
despawn
a child in the womb. 100%.
Here we go again. Here we go again down the YouTube question mark path.
Well, if this is going up on Rumble, it's fine.
Rumble and Getter, we're good to go. My YouTube audience, I don't know.
You might just want to clip that part out. But I think that she is about herself and how if she continues to push foreign aid, there's some underlying thing that's coming back to her. She doesn't care about the citizens of this country. And everyone claims that Donald Trump only cares about himself, that he's only out to feed his own ego.
I just read you that thing from that Republican Party officer.
If he did, you think that he would have gone to Georgia? And when someone asked him about votes or about voters in those areas, it's not about the voters in those areas. It's about making sure that those people are alive and can rebuild their homes and their families. When it comes to voters, it's the rest of the country that need to make sure the person that actually cares about the citizens of this country gets voted back into office on November 5th. That would be Donald Trump, not the DEI hire, word salad, as Magic Johnson
Well,
says.
you're just fired up today. You're irrepressible today, Captain Bannon. Holy moly. You're going for it. You are going for it. You know, I try to get, I mean, this is just, and Tanner and I talk about this a lot on the podcast when I'm by myself. And I'm getting more grounded in this for myself. I try not to look at the people. I just do, because people, my mother used to always say, human beings have feet of clay. In other words, we're here for a brief moment. We do the best we can. We fall far short of our potential, even if we're sensational. So I just looked at it and I want to say, because you really, we all have to vote. I mean, we got people listening. You know, I talked to my daughter today. She's not going to like hearing this. My daughter, this was a big family fight. She's actually at Bernard College. She's a classmate of Ilhan Omar's daughter at Bernard, which is a college within Columbia University. So she's actually in the eye of the dragon going to school. And it was really a big problem for me. We were almost to the edge of estrangement over this issue. And we talked this morning. We're getting along better, and I love her. And she's a very exceptional kid. And she says to me, she goes, I'm not voting. And I said, why? I don't like either of these candidates. I can't vote for either one of them. I go, you're not thinking about this correctly, honey. I said, first of all, your vote is your exercise of free will. So for you to be an American citizen and not vote insults me because I'm your father. But more importantly, you have two distinct ideologies to choose from. It's not about the people that ride on top of this energy for like a shooting star. It's about republicanism and the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. And we've already lost the Republican nature of our country. And because of the efforts of great thinkers like your father, who languishes in jail as a political prisoner, because he's saying that the Democrat liberal order, well, I don't know if he said it, but I'm going to say it. It's just a failed intellectual exercise. It may have even had some good intent when it started, but it's a failure. And what we're trying to do in the American Citizens Movement is restore the Republican idea and let republicanism dominate our country again through the electoral process. So, all the people, it's not really about these people. It's about, do you want to be the sovereign of your own life? Do you want to be self-governing, or based on unalienable rights granted to us by a creator? That's on one side of the football. The other side of the football is globalism, global communism, tyranny. It's very clear to me that the Democrat liberal order is leading us to tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Republicanism is just an idea. We're trying to restore the idea. If President Trump was inaugurated and served another 4 years, I think we could do a lot as a country to restore republicanism.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean republicanism in our hearts, in our souls, how we treat each other, like how I treat you.
Mm-hmm.
We were just saying, I respect you. You're my guest here. This is an old thing in traditional cultures. Maureen's a guest. She's here to work to help Royce White for Senate, which is deeply appreciated. And I'm working on the campaign, and Maureen's here, and she's my guest. She's a stranger in a strange land. So the locals then say, come on into the house. What can we get you? What would you like to eat? How can we make you comfortable? It's called a traditional treat your neighbor as you yourself would like to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly what you're saying about this debacle,
Yes.
right?
And people, to go back to voting, you see some people like, oh, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris because she'd be the first woman president and she's black. So I just want to, Martin Luther King Jr. in his I Have a Dream speech said, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So I want to point out the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. You should, and I know I'll probably get torn apart.
Are you going to go there?
I'm probably going to be torn apart for this, but you shouldn't be voting based on the color of their skin. You should be voting based on the content of their character. And we see that Kamala Harris has no character.
Well, I'm going to take it even a step farther than that. I'm going to say the content of a person's character includes the philosophy with which they live their life. It's more than
Mm-hmm.
the deeds
Mm-hmm.
that they may have done at some point along their life path. It's how are they living their lives? What do they believe?
Yep. And I know a lot of people are like, well, Trump did this, Trump did that. He hasn't had one spouse. I get that. No one's perfect. But he has shown time and time again that he cares about the citizens of this country. And I will take mean tweets and all over someone that didn't earn positions she had previously to VP, was picked for VP because of the color of her skin. If someone wants to question President Trump's past, Kamala Harris doesn't have a perfect past. Just ask Willie Brown's wife.
I knew you were going to go there. I knew it. See, myself personally, I just, because I got so up to every one of these people, like President Trump. Okay. So you have ambition and you have power and you're going to have sin is going to come with that. You're going to be tempted. I mean, you don't have to be President Trump to be tempted.
And no one's perfect. I mean, people in this race, in this Senate race, people have called into question Royce's past. Everyone has a past. Everyone is not perfect. You have to look at their actions. Do their actions match their words? And do they actually care about the citizens of this country? He does. What has Amy done for the residents of Minnesota? I mean, I haven't seen her campaign. I haven't seen on any of her social media her, doing.
Very simple. She's an 18-year senator. There's never been a budget busting bill she ever voted against because she cared about my financial well-being. There's never been a vote against a war or an appropriation for the military that she's ever taken.
Mhm.
She has gone to the Ukraine and has appeared there with the most scurrilous Republican rhinos, like Senator Lindsey Graham
Lady G.
of South Carolina.
Lady G.
You know, it was funny.
Oh,
I've
I'm
played a
tired
lot.
this morning.
I've played a lot of his
Or tonight.
clips on the Professor Penn podcast, and I find myself sometimes slipping into a Freudian, and I start calling him Leslie Graham, and I feel awful about it because I don't know anything about such things, nor do they matter to me. What matters to me is the man is continuously stirring up war.
Mhm.
He is a salesperson for the military-industrial
Mhm.
complex, and he's rude about it. We just played a clip on the podcast. He was in the Ukraine with Zelensky, and he was talking about the Kursk invasion, and he said, "Oh, this is fantastic. Kick their ass." And I'm thinking to myself, man, this is a nuclear power. You don't kick the ass of a nuclear power because at the end, when the ass kicking or the ass kissing, as the case may be, gets out of control,
Mhm.
they have nuclear weapons. They're not going to lose. And these people are poking the bear in the balls. And I just don't understand this my entire lifetime since 63. We talked about in a previous podcast. Your father came from the background of the Kennedy Democrats,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So did I, right? So did I. We had that Cuban Missile Crisis in 63. I remember my father, he's going to the university to teach. He says to my mom, if something goes wrong, take David down to the caves by the Mississippi River. I'm thinking to myself, how many people are going to be in those caves? It sounds very not sanitary. It doesn't sound very relaxing there. I was about 5. I already had a phobia about being in places with lots of people. I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder can hit you young. If you're born right after World War II and half your family gets smoked in the Ukraine, which is what happened to my family. But, after 63, we came very close, very, very close to that getting out of control until the end of the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
There was never a time again where there was a direct confrontation of that nature. It was considered to be foreign policy suicide. Jim Baker said that the response, he was the Secretary of State under the revered President Ronald Reagan, Saint Reagan. He said that the number one job of a Secretary of State was to not get into a nuclear war. That's what your job is. That's your primary job. Then another thing, I'm seeing like Royce's telling me all the time now, and I'm actually seeing this on X, that the threat of nuclear weapons is overplayed. That uh, you're looking around.
There's a fly.
I got nervous about the weapons. I thought I thought there was incoming. No,
The fly kept hitting that. Sorry.
no, that Royce believes, and I'm seeing it on X, that people think that the threat of nuclear weapons is overplayed. And I'm asking myself, what freaking alternative universe are these people living in? Because we have these alternative universes. I really am afraid of nuclear weapons.
Mhm.
I am old enough to remember the fallout that was even available to me at my time in the 60s of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Those cities were destroyed. There was,
Well, we've seen, and even me, I mean, I obviously wasn't alive during World War II and even up to the Vietnam War. I'm an 80s baby. But studying history, and it was helpful to have my dad teach me a lot about history growing up. I saw the devastation and destruction caused by nuclear weapons, so I know that it is a real threat.
I mean, is it the end of humanity? No. Is it the end of human civilization as we know it? Yes. Do I think that the global elites want a nuclear war? I don't. And I'm going to tell you why I feel that way. They can't control that outcome. It's too variable. What we've got is a kind of melting down of everything all the time. It's not a conspiracy. It's just not a coincidence. I love that one. I got to get it in. Got to use that one. That says so much because, like, my daughter's at Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
I presume I know what they're teaching her there. I presume I know. And I went to an East Coast school in the 70s, and I know what they taught me there then. And it was already bad enough that it was Marxism 101, Marxism 201,
Mm-hmm.
Marxism. Everything was in the lens of Marxism. And that was in the mid 70s.
My school was not.
Well, you went to a kind of unique
But
school.
now I believe it is there. But yes.
Yeah,
I went to an East Coast school too.
what year did you graduate from that school?
2010.
Okay, a lot can happen at West Point
Mm-hmm.
in 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
Probably faster than other institutions because, well, what's the tenure? They don't have tenure for the professors at West Point, do they?
No, no, a lot of them are rotating
Or
military personnel. Now there are some civilians. Like I know my degree is in sociology with a minor in engineering, but one of my professors in sociology is still there. The one that I had, back I think I had a class of his in '08, and he's still there in 2024. So I think that some civilians, I don't know if they technically call it tenure at West Point, but they have permanent positions.
But there's a lot of people rotating
There
through.
are, because it is still, you have a lot of military personnel that you go to get your master's in a specific area and have already set within the Army that you were going back up to West Point to teach in this department.
Would you say that the military is becoming socialist in its orientation?
So I brought this up on a Twitter space that Royce was actually on with Royce Hood and Father Pavone, and Kevin Posobiec and I were the hosts of it. It was really Royce Hood was the major host of it, but Royce was on there, Royce White, to talk about his platform, and the military came up, and I actually spoke to it. The military I was in is not the military now. We're more focused on gender training, queer theory, pronouns, all of that. We're not focused on war fighting. And I noticed that started to change towards the very end of when I was in. But I think that the Marxism that has corrupted our military has weakened it significantly.
Well, that would be the idea of that, wouldn't it?
Yes, and I tweeted about this because West Point awarded Barack Obama with a prestigious award for West Point, basically for what he's done for the military. Barack Obama hated the military. He decreased the size of our military. He doesn't care about veterans. He apologized to Vietnam for the Vietnam War. You have a bunch of Vietnam vets when they came home, by the way. They were called baby killers. People hated them. Hated them. Now, every time I see a Vietnam vet, I thank them for their service.
You know, I got to say, I was there when they came home. There was some of that, and it was awful.
But I don't believe that they were thanked for their service.
Well, you know, because they came home into a distinctly anti-military environment. They were, most of them, draftees. Many of them agreed with the anti-military sentiment of the time, but they were altered by their experience. So, you know, that this is something we talked about in Relative, and we'll just do a flyby on it if you want to do a flyby. We talked about this. You know, Royce is a threat to Amy Klobuchar, and we know that because creeping into our press now is sound bites from years ago that he said taken out of context.
Yes, and to that point, if Amy didn't see him as a challenger, if she thought she could just walk right in to another 6 years in the Senate, She wouldn't have her team digging up tweets from years ago that he said. And she did. She dug up a tweet from November 25th, 2022 that he posted about World War II.
Which he said that the wrong people won that war.
And that he said no good guys in that war.
No good guys. Okay, so.
And he put good guys in quotes.
But I want to unpack it just, relative to this, kind of conversation about the military, and because I'm so wound into that. When I was a young kid, I used to make plastic plastic models, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew every World War II airplane, every World War II battle, every general, every nuance of everything. And I thought the military was great because it was such an incredible event.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it was taught to me when I was in elementary school was about the heroic actions of our military. And I think what's been going on here is what these pundits, these leftists are trying to lay on Royce is that the action of the individual American citizen that fought and often died for freedom, that he was impugning those people. And I think Royce could come back and make it clear, but I want to make it clear. It has nothing to do with the Vietnam veterans that were sent to Vietnam to fight, or the Korean veterans that, man, some of the stories that I even heard on War Room about some of the battles in that war, and then back to World War II, the citizens that went are incredible. It's the foreign policy of our leadership that I think he's calling into question.
I believe so.
So let's not let these leftists try to smear a 33-year-old charismatic candidate as if he doesn't respect American citizens, because that's the very people he's trying to work for and defend. So they're really, going out of their way to tell an untrue tale here. Now,
they are. Comes
down to the bad people won, or what was his exact quote? The wrong people won, the bad people won.
Hold on.
There were no good people. Because certainly,
I got to pull it up. Hold
on. A big winner in that war, for example, was Stalin. Stalin won. Stalin was the major reason that the Germans were defeated. And under Stalin, there's estimates of up to 100 million Russians were killed.
Okay, he said, it dawned on me today, and once again, this was on 11/25/22. It dawned on me today. The bad guys won in World War II. There were no good guys. And if you're listening to this, not watching the video, I did air quotes around good guys. In that war, the controlling interests had a jump ball. If you look closely, you see the link between liberalism and communism in the Allied forces. Remember what General Patton said and why they capped him.
He said we fought the wrong people, which is kind of fodder for those that would call General Patton an anti-Semite. But having said that, not to go down that rabbit hole, I look at the thing, you think about what was going on. Why did the war happen? You had the English, the Germans, and the Russians. And the English were kind of a spent shell. They were done. They had lost so much of their young male population in World War I, they couldn't sustain themselves, and their empire collapsed right after World War II. They'd had a very long run in the sun as the major power on planet Earth, hundreds of years. But it was really a battle for Europe between the Russians and the Germans. Well, who financed the Russians? It was Western capital that the Soviets, the Trotskyites, the Bolsheviks were able to tap to establish the Soviet Union. The Germans knew that. The Germans knew that Western capital, what Putin is calling now the Anglo-Saxons, and what position was Germany in? Germany had been brought to its knees after World War I and had been strapped with reparations. I mean, the society wasn't working because of the economic conditions that was foisted upon us by the victors of World War I. That'd be the French and the British. Oh, I think the Americans were in on that too, weren't they?
Mhm.
So the Americans lent money to the Germans,
Mhm.
which they pulled during the great market crash of 29. They were lending money to the Russians. They were in the money lending business. And the Germans, they're sitting here hamstrung by these reparations to the West and facing a communist takeover within their own country, Marxism, which they associated with the Russians. They were, and I'm not speaking for the Nazis, I'm Jewish. I'm just saying what was going on the other street corner. They believed they were in an existential fight,
Mhm.
and they lost to Stalin. I, Oliver Stone did some really good work on this. This is another thing. I was brought up to believe that the United States defeated the Germans, and that's not true. The Russians defeated the Germans. The United States came in late to the war and helped. Who the United States defeated was the Japanese. Straight up.
Mhm.
Island by island, the worst fighting in world history, hand-to-hand fighting. And you look at that, okay, so the Japanese lost. We defeated them. The Chinese came out on that deal. Who came out there? Mao. I don't have any evidence and receipts, but it is said around the campfire that if you include the abortions, up to 400 million Chinese have perished since the establishment of the dynasty of Mao. So one winner was Stalin, who was a mass murderer. I mean, even the Soviet leaders, Khrushchev, started to say, hey, Stalin, come on. This guy was crazy because he killed so many people.
Mhm.
Maybe 100 million Russians. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, you can't even get the numbers because the killing was so great and there was no records. I've seen reports that 60 million Christians were liquidated by Stalin. Something for the PhDs to do the scholarship and come in and show us the receipts, right?
Mhm.
And the Mao, man, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people. So two of the great beneficiaries, apropos to Royce's point,
Mhm.
are not good guys,
Mhm.
right? We agree about that,
Mhm.
right? Because who really came out on the deal? The United States, the Russians, and the Chinese.
Mhm.
Those were the big victors in the post-war period,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So then you get into, well, who was running the country here? What was established in our country in 1946? And, you could say, because I lived through this, you could say, I think quite reasonably, that things started out with good intentions. Maybe they did not. Who knows what's in people's heads? But you track out the establishment of the post World War II Democrat liberal order,
Mhm.
and you take a look at it from 46 to 2024. And as I said earlier, it's a failed experiment. So maybe the people then 47, although we could talk about cads like Jimmy Burns or General Curtins LeMay. I mean, there were some cads that were rolling around in the soup there. I mean, there were some not nice people. And it was a Darwinist group. It was a scientific group that brought us the nuclear age, which has hung over humanity like the sword of Damocles. The highest flowering of science is the ability for man to kill himself.
Mhm.
That's a little strange. The expression of our greatest and highest achievement is we can commit mass suicide. It's kind of strange, taking it out of the hands of God, so to speak. So, who were those people? Well, okay, you track them into 2024. Who are they? It's Vice President Harris.
Mhm.
That's who it is.
Mhm.
So, uh, I don't think his comment is that off base. I'm just going to say, I don't personally think it is because I know we had a eugenics movement in this country that has prevailed since day one. We had a Nazi party in the United States that was holding rallies right up to the start of the war. We imported thousands and thousands of Germans who were Nazis that we know of. If the U.S. government admits to importing 4,000 Nazis, hey, that's a diversion. Could have been 40,000, and they all went into our academic institutions. For example, the leader of the Saturn rocket program that led to the moon landing was a Nazi, a member of the SS. His name was Werner von Braun. Did you know that? Isn't that great? And here I got Captain Bannon, very educated, very erudite, knows her game pretty well. But down the memory hole goes that the leader of the American space effort, Nazi, NASA employee, a Nazi, who met with President Kennedy. There's actually a video I'm going to play on a Professor Penn podcast upcoming of Werner von Braun amusing Adolf Hitler by showing him the firing of rockets in 1944 and the very same scene with President Kennedy in 1963. This guy was a Nazi. He ran our ballistic missile program. So we imported all these Nazis. They went to work in our universities. You know, when they came over here, they took the Nazi oath. The Nazi oath was a serious thing. And they became, maybe they were teaching sociology. They might have been teaching anthropology. They might have been teaching chemistry or physics. But they were Nazis. And the Nazi ideology was what? It essentially was Darwinism, a eugenicist belief that you could create a master race through negative and positive strategies. The positive strategy is, hey, we're white supremacists and it's white on white over here. Oh, and these people over here, they're subhumans. We're clipping them out of the human race. And we brought these people into our country? Who made that decision? Why did they make that decision? Apparently, there's things here that even to this day we don't understand. And I think that's what Royce is trying to bring out. And here's you. I'm going to have to school you up on. I might read 3,000 scientists, Nazis, that we brought over. There's like 3,000 of them into our most important academic positions. So I think what he's trying to say, and if the leftists are going to listen to you because they're tracking you, hey, you people need to open a history book and quit smearing people with BS. Because he's not saying that the individual combat veteran who actually won the war is a bad guy. He's saying the people that dominated the post-World War II democratic liberal order are not good guys.
The bigger picture.
The big picture.
Yes.
You know, like globalism, like workers of the world unite. Like you'll have nothing and you'll be happy. Like make everybody poor. Like Vice President Harris. You know, all of you leftists that are getting down on Royce or getting down on me, like this Michael Broadcorp, he clips out 2 minutes of a podcast. You know, these people need to understand that the American people are no longer going to be stupid. We're going to educate people. People are educating themselves. We need to be taking responsibility for what our country has done since 1946 and listen to other opinions. Of course, what's the impulse of these people? We got to take away free speech. In fact, we're going to jail the people.
Not free speech. You got to get rid of the voices of the people that spread misinformation. That's once again in air quotes if you're listening, because it's people that speak the truth. It's people that don't speak their narrative. They're trying to jail and shut up. Case in point, political prisoner Bannon that is currently in Danbury Correctional Facility. He speaks the truth. So what do? As a leftist, you put him in jail. You know, he filed for early release. DOJ asked BOP not to release him because supposedly there was nothing in his case that had changed.
There's 2 great clips. I think you need to get them on War Room. I'm going to play them on the Professor Penn podcast this coming very soon in an upcoming podcast. One is John Kerry, and another one's Hillary Clinton, and they're saying the exact same thing because they're, reading out of the same prayer book. Democracy is too important to be assaulted with all this misinformation. So to save democracy, we're going to have to change free speech.
And Joe Scarborough
He said it too.
on Morning Joe the
Yeah.
other day said, well, Steve Bannon, he might not have said Steve, but he said Bannon and Kash Patel have said straight to the camera, basically they're coming after us as journalists. So of course, me being the feisty Bannon that I am, Joe, on Morning Joe, preserve your documents. It's not as everyone wants to say. They're like, oh, when Trump gets back in office, he said there's going to be retribution. It's called justice. It is called justice. Preserve your documents. You have spread false information and a narrative for far too long, and people are waking up to your BS.
Well, that is the great threat to the entire post-World War II Democrat liberal order. And again, it may have started out with some good intention, but what it's morphed into is monstrous when you compare it to our republicanism, which is guaranteed to me as an American citizen. The Constitution actually guarantees a Republican form of governance to every state.
Yeah, and all these people, oh my gosh, Trump is a threat to our democracy. Clearly, you haven't cracked a history book. We are a constitutional republic.
There's many words that are hijacked or morphed, like the word equity. Vice President Harris, there's many, many clips where she talks about people might start out in different places.
What has been burdened by all that?
No, she's much more communist about it than that. She just says straight up that equal access to opportunity is just a start, but because people start in different places, the key is that they all have the same outcomes. And I'm thinking to myself, why would I even want to get up and try? I don't want to, it's so anti the reason my family came to this country and I'm an American citizen is the idea of self-governance and that I can pursue my own happiness. And what they're saying is no. Vice President Harris is talking about equitable outcomes. And I'm talking about the stealing of words. We're talking about, how ideas get more. Equity is the value of my shares in a company or the value I have in my property has become equitable means equity no longer means that we're different. They flip it right around and say it means we're the same. And the reason why they do that, this is just a Professor Penn comment and opinion. They're run by Satanists because a Satanist is called an antichrist. What does a Satanist want to do? Wants to reverse the idea of Christ, the gospel of Christ. The Satanist lives to reverse Christ's gospel. So if my rights are given to me by a creator and it's life, no, we're changing that one. Liberty, we're changing that one. And my pursuit of happiness, they're reversing every one of these ideas. Sometimes it's just a word like equity. Sometimes a word like democracy. The post-World War II Democrat liberal order, Democrat liberal. And I was thinking about this too, just this morning, getting ready to talk to you. I was thinking about the New World Order. You know what I think? And it's right, there's a Latin for that on our money, right? And I was thinking, what's going on here? I think the New World Order was republicanism. I think the founding fathers sought to establish a new world order where the individual citizen was sovereign, which reversed thousands of years of tyranny, monarchical tyranny. And then what these bastards do? They took it away from us. They said the New World Order is the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, which is why they place such a high advertising value on individual rights, human rights, the rights of people to freely determine their own futures, unless they don't want to be Democrat liberal order people. Then we go to war on them. And that's, I think, what Royce is talking about. It's like the Chinese people. The Chinese people, Mao was a totalitarian. Xi is a totalitarian. But guess what? The Chinese people are all good with that. I know we have some Chinese people that are over here that want to be Republicans. And we had that during Sun Yat-sen at the beginning of the 1900s before Chiang Kai-shek got control of the government. Yeah, they wanted to be Republicans, but the root, it was on rock. The roots couldn't get down because the Chinese people have been living in an authoritarian model for thousands of years. Right now today, if you talk to the Chinese, I don't have the receipts. I only have anecdotal evidence, but I have had many Chinese people tell me, we're too free over here in America. I'm thinking to myself, too free? Come on. But they don't want that level of freedom. They want the surveillance and the tyranny because they want their society to work in their own Chinese way. And I'm not sticking up for their way, but it's their way. If they want to be authoritarians over in China, none of my business.
They live under the Communist Party.
That's correct, but that's them. I don't want to live under the Communist Party here. You know?
There's a lot of Chinese that don't want to live under the Communist Party in China, by the way.
Well, there may be. Where are they? Where are they? I mean, that's just like the Americans that don't want to live on the Communist Party in America. Where are they? You know, when that wall came down in Berlin, those citizens did not want to live under the Communist Party of Germany anymore. Apparently, life had gotten so uncomfortable that they were going to knock that wall down. And I do know there's some people that feel that way in China, but I will tell you, I haven't been there many times. That dissent
I'm not saying it's the majority.
but it's squelched. When I was there in, the early 2000s, for example, people were very open about their criticism of the Chinese government and the way they looked up to the United States of America. And then when we got into this current period, that was over. So I can't gauge accurately what's going on there. And I know there's people that have, but again, China's for the Chinese. I want America not to have a communist government, right?
Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
So going back to the choice, please, Elise, if you're listening to this, would you please vote? It's either vote for your own sovereignty as an American citizen or vote to be ruled by communists. It's just that simple. Like that officer in the party, I read that. I might read that. He'd be mad at me. But my point is, he's so focused on the personalities involved, we're losing track of what's really going on here. I mean, Trump is our standard bearer. He's not the philosophy. He's the warrior out in front.
Well, I've had a few people recently post on social media that I either served with in the military or, have no outside of the military have said, how as a woman can anyone vote for Donald Trump? He doesn't respect women. And, I've gone back to them like, no, I think Kamala Harris doesn't respect women and use factual evidence to prove that she does not. But it's like they want to question your mental state or how educated you are by questioning how could you vote for this man? They're following or believing mainstream media's narrative of him. Just look at the actions. Actions speak louder than words. You could say one thing, but unless your actions line up with that, you have to see who actions match what they are saying. And Donald Trump cares about women. Everyone, all of the liberals are like, oh, he wants a national abortion ban. He wants a national abortion ban. If he wanted a national abortion ban, don't you think that he would have put it in place in his first administration?
And he says repeatedly he would
that
not sign that.
But
don't listen to your lying ears. Just forget about the evidence.
Well, all these states, they're Trump abortion bans.
Well, what they say is he's lying. I mean, what they're saying is don't believe him. But actually, we're actually entering a period of liberation from this logjam we've been in.
And if he didn't care about women or care about families, recently he said, when I am back in office, the government or I will mandate insurance companies to cover the cost of IVF. Clearly, him saying that shows, and once he's back in office, his actions will match what he said. He cares about women and growing families. The Democrat Party just wants to
shrink the population.
Yeah. I mean, why not? I better not say this because you might want to edit this out for YouTube. But, but you push an experimental
vacuum
that we've seen reports that it causes
infertility
or fertility issues. What a way to
lower the volume of
population when you can't have a child. Oh, but if you on the off chance do get pregnant, let's give you the chance to
despawn
a child in the womb. But if not,
this is going to be a big empty spot in the podcast, isn't it? We might have to play a song right in here.
let's just on YouTube. But if you don't get an abortion, let's just kill them by what we put in their bodies, food, and the
Kool-Aid
again. But the fact that, and they try and say that Trump's trying to get rid of IVF. If he did, why would he say that on stage?
I think RFK getting involved in the nationalist movement with all of his work on human well-being.
I also think Republican officials that have had to use fertility treatments as well, probably, or people, I don't know any personally, government officials that have had to use alternative like IVF to have a child. However, I think that people talking to Trump about that, like within his inner circle, probably helped him come to that opinion. And Tim Walz once again misspoke. His wife didn't have to use IVF. She had to use IUI, a fertility treatment, but different than IVF. So let's see. And did he say, oh, when he had a chance at any point when Trump supposedly came after him, or Vance coming after him for having to use fertility treatments, he could have said, we will support that being done. You know, the Harris-Walz campaign could have said the same thing Trump did. They didn't. Now, I bet you because Kamala's done it before, she'll probably come out in the next few weeks and say that. But I don't want to go down a rabbit hole about Tim Walz.
Well,
I can't stand your governor. He's a lying sack of.
He's definitely got you. Well, I think it's the stolen valor thing that puts you over the edge.
But watching let's change the subject, going to the debate. First off, the first question, he looked like he was about to have an accident on stage. He was couldn't get his words together. And I get it, earlier in this episode, I was so mad that I was having trouble speaking. There's a difference. I was so mad and so passionate about something. He's just an incoherent idiot. Couldn't get his words together. But he said he misspoke about his ties to the CCP. They didn't even bring up, that would have been a chance for Vance to go right in. Like, oh, you misspoke about that. You misspoke about your stolen valor. And I'm surprised the campaign didn't come out after his little slip up about how he's friends with school shooters. I'm surprised they didn't come out and say, the campaign didn't come out and say, oh, he misspoke about that too.
Well, they might get to it.
I mean, that's their excuse. And then he said that Trump was lying about the abortion issue here in the state of Minnesota.
Right. Anybody can go read that law.
And he said, oh, that was fact checked. He didn't even bring up Minnesota. Trump didn't bring up Minnesota in the debate. He brought up Virginia because Virginia will allow abortion up to birth and after birth.
Well, Minnesota has
as
the
well.
Same thing.
They both, but Trump said Virginia. He didn't even bring up Minnesota.
But I talked to women and about this, and they said never happens. And I said, well, if it never happened,
then why were there 8 kids that were attempt abortions that were botched, and survived the abortion and then weren't given care once they were born
I
and
just,
died.
I look at this at a completely different level. If you're out there and you're watching this because you want to throw shade on us and you're going to vote for Vice President Harris and you just track out what these people are doing
Mhm.
militarily around the world and the potential for things to get completely out of control.
Mhm.
Or you listen to President Trump saying, I will end the war in the Ukraine. I will
Mhm.
end the war in the Middle East. This is all terrible. I want to have peace. I
Mhm.
want peace.
Mhm.
And you just track out what happens to women's rights if we have a complete and utter breakdown of our social order.
Mhm.
Women's rights are dependent upon a social order.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know what women are thinking. I mean, they're voting allegedly in their best interests of what their one interest issue is, but they're missing a much more fundamental issue, called survival. That's the level I'm viewing it at. When President Trump says straight up, I'm going to end these wars, I can look by everything else. People tell me I hear all this, it's all noise.
Mhm.
The thing I'm listening to is
Mhm.
I'm ending the wars. I'm ending them. Good enough. Please proceed.
Mhm.
Oh, is there anybody out there that wants to get on the side of war? Vote for the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. Because what they promised us in 46 was that the United Nations in World War II was the war to end all wars. And what they did was they just regulated the wars. They're regulated. They're not supposed to pop out of control.
Well, and getting involved in more wars and you've depleted the military. Retention numbers are terrible. Recruitment numbers are terrible in the military. What do you think they're going to come to? Like what they did in Vietnam.
That
I pray that it doesn't come
You
down
talk
to a
about the
draft.
draft.
I pray that it doesn't come down to a draft, but if you spread your resources too thin and put our military into multiple wars, what do you think it's going to come down to when you don't have enough people in the military?
What
And
I
and and people
what I
people
think,
people people should vote. If you're over the age of being drafted, you probably have a child that's within that age of being drafted or that was in the military that's on IRR or has gotten out, but they can still be called back. That's basically what IRR is. Do you wanna send your sons and daughters to a foreign battlefield to die? It was different in World War II. You and I had this discussion. It was
we were
different in World War II and after 9/11. You joined because of your patriotism to
because it
this
was a
country,
war of survival.
because you saw your country, your homeland being attacked by a foreign country. And, if people go down that rabbit hole about 9/11, you saw your country under attack, your own citizens dying, your brothers, your sisters dying. So, we saw people join after because of a sense of patriotism and to protect what has been destroyed. You think someone right now would be like, we're getting involved in all these wars. They haven't attacked us. Yeah, I think I want to go sign up for that. And you see what the military has become and the Marxists that run it, it's completely different. And I know that you and I very much had that discussion. I was very passionate about it then when we had this discussion.
Well, I just feel that again, women, do you know that the very leftists that are protecting your health care also are talking about drafting you? Because, equity. I mean, it's hard to get on both sides of that football. So there's a lot of push in our Congress to have young women be part of this upcoming draft. And this draft is going to come unless peace breaks out.
Mhm.
So what does Donald Trump want to do? He wants to be in the toaster business. He said, I'm going to bring back the auto business to the United States like it hasn't been for 60 or 70 years. He's talking about peacetime business.
He also doesn't want America's sons and daughters to die on foreign battlefields. We saw that happen in World War II. We saw that happen post 9/11. I mean, we were in Afghanistan 20 years. We saw tens of thousands, I would say, on the lower end of that, deaths in country. There's been 40,000 deaths
Suicides.
by suicide
Crazy.
by veterans that served
Carnage. American carnage.
post 9/11.
Carnage.
So I'm not going to say that the deaths from those wars were just on the battlefield.
I have to ask you, I have never had a person really, well, that's not true, but they weren't close to me. I was close to some suicides, but the people were not close. I mean, I was not entangled with those people.
Mhm.
Do you have people that you serve with that have taken their own lives?
I have friends that I know in other units, not in like direct contact that I worked with every day, that have committed suicide. No, but I do know.
Because I noticed that when people, I think we were talking about this not that long ago, Tanner. Didn't you have somebody that you were really close to that committed suicide?
I mean, I
Wasn't that, I mean,
I had a friend that worked on another campaign that we didn't even serve in the same branch or at the same time, but they committed
I've
suicide.
just noticed that when I've seen people that were entangled with people that committed suicide, it seems to be like one of the most bitterest. I just met a wonderful woman here in Minnesota just this last 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, who actually, I met her personally, and she's an activist and very educated, an engineer, and we were talking and she started crying. And I looked at it because it was very, and it was a non sequitur. And I realized, and she told me that her son had committed suicide, and it was many years ago. And every time she thinks of him, she still cries. And she gave me books about grief. So this is her son, and she's still horribly while super functional. She's an engineer, she's an activist, she's a patriot, she believes in human well being, and she's working for it. She's not talking, but those suicides are just, they tear a hole in the fabric of life.
And actually, September was Suicide Awareness Month as well. So I know it's October now, but if you can hear this, please check on your battle buddies, friends, family that you had that served in the military. Just check on them.
This the society, in a sense, we're committing a kind of a collective spiritual suicide because our traditional faith structures are being eroded. They're being demonized. Again, reversing what was good is now evil. So, there's a lot of ways to get taken out.
And especially, I know I just said, check on your battle buddies, especially those former military that are providing recovery, search and rescue and recovery operations in the Appalachia area. I've seen a lot of former military that have gone above and beyond the call of duty. They're not in anymore. And I've said this before, just because you take the uniform off doesn't mean that oath ends. We took an oath to support and defend our Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yes, we're going to get down to an argument about what that means, aren't we?
No, I'm just saying, at this point, the federal government seems to be an enemy.
Not you and me.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the argument is going to be in the battle space of media. What is patriotism? What is the nature of patriotism? Are we going to be patriotic and support and stand for republicanism, or for the post-World War II Democrat liberal order? I mean, that's really the choice. That is the voter's choice. I understand it's Donald Trump or Vice President Harris or Amy Klobuchar, Royce White. But, Amy Klobuchar is a perfect one. She is a poster child for the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. She is every aspect of it. And, how can you recognize it? Because it stands on an ideology of climate change, social equity, and democracy. And she is a fantastic spokesperson for all three pillars of that liberal order. Okay, well, when we're spokespeople for the republicanism, well, at base, we're saying we're self-governing. What the Democrat liberal order says is, hey, when you self-govern, you kill the planet. It's your fault and your self-governance and your choices that's killing the planet. That sounds like a reversal to me. Like, oh, if you keep being free, everybody's going to die. It's kind of a reverse, kind of like equity. Kind of a word salad. Did I trigger something in you wanted to say?
No, I was just thinking, I know not everyone in this country is served. It's a very small percentage of members of this country that have
Because it's
served.
voluntary.
Correct. However, I think the oath that the military takes is applicable to everyone, and the enemy, to support and defend our Constitution against enemies foreign and domestic. The enemy would be the Democratic Party, who aligns themselves with our enemies,
Well,
our foreign enemies.
You're sparing nothing today. You're going all the way. I mean, holy
Now I'm
moly.
never going to be allowed back.
I've been trying to plot a course here on the Professor Penn podcast where I'm going to avoid going to jail. But, because Maureen Bannon has brought this up, I have to say that the post-World War II Democrat liberal order is a cover story for communism. So if we have a Republican form of governance, it stands in juxtaposition. These two things don't get along with each other. And they did the transition so eloquently and so slowly over time that we forgot we even have a republic. It's not even part of the vernacular anymore.
And I think that I know anyone on the left listening will take what I just said and think that I'm saying that Ukraine is an enemy and that I'm saying we are in support with Russia. But let's look at Ukraine. I posted or reshared a video of Ukraine right now in the United States that was devastated by Hurricane Helene. The money that we keep funneling to Ukraine, they are an enemy. So,
boy, you're really radical today.
I just want to point that out.
Who's the enemy? The Ukrainians are the enemy. Did I get that? Who's the enemy?
The oligarchs.
The oligarchs
in
there
Ukraine
that are sucking up the cash.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Well, it's an interest. It's not democratic over there. It's not a republic.
Because if you look at Ukraine,
yes,
and you look at the areas devastated by Hurricane Helene,
yes,
I think the money that we keep funneling to Ukraine should be back over here in the United States.
X-nay on the Ukraine money, and let's turn on the tap for our own fellow citizens.
So the fact that they keep begging for the oligarchs and President Zelensky keep begging for money, yes, the oligarchs and President Zelensky, the enemy
of the well-being of the American people.
Yes.
Because there's only so many resources. Even when you have a printing press,
yes,
there's a limit, right?
Yes. I know they're going to cut up what I said, but that's...
Well, what you're saying is we need to redeploy our resources in behalf of the well-being of the American people.
We need to take care of America first, and then we can worry about our foreign allies.
Well, you know why they don't want Donald Trump as a president, in my opinion? It's
because he'll make sure that it's America first.
Well, what he's going to say is, you know what? You all, my name is Paul, and it's between you all. Because I'm going to take care of the citizens of the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
And, the idea of citizenship, of individual sovereignty is maybe, which stands on monotheism. I mean, this stands on the tradition of the Judeo-Christian culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea of humanity. I mean, it is the breakthrough idea Otherwise, if we lose that idea, hey, there's always somebody that'll make you a slave.
Mhm.
Always. So if we're weakening our country, which we are, when I say we, it's we the people. If we vote for republicanism, we're going to strengthen our country. And that's exactly what the Democrat liberal order does not want, because it has to have equitable outcomes.
Mm.
We have to be the same as, I feel sorry for the Jamaicans. Come on, they got how about the Haitians? They got a raw shake. They did. But hey, I'm not a Haitian.
Mhm.
I'm an American.
Mhm.
We work to make this country great. Why do we want to reverse that? I understand the sentiment of equity. I just listened to Foreign Minister of China address the United Nations, and he's talking about equitable outcomes. There has to be equitable outcomes. So what our leadership has done is move the world towards sustainable, equitable outcomes at the expense of these citizens that you're so enraged about their experience.
Mhm.
And we're going to have to sort this out as American people. And there's probably American citizens that are willing to sacrifice the well-being of other Americans to have that global equitable outcome. So sure are they that we're going to destroy the planet.
Yeah, they reside in the Biden-Harris regime.
They seem to, don't they?
Mhm.
Yes, they do. Some of them went to West Point. That's what's really sad about it.
Mhm.
A lot of them went to Columbia.
Hmm.
When my daughter told me she wanted to go to Bernard, man, the fur flew around. I said, do you know what I do for a living? But of course, her mother and I are divorced. So what a great way to let dad know that there's limits to being dad. We're going to go do something you don't like to do. You don't want to do it? Hey, we're going to run for it. Actually, she's turning out pretty good. I'm actually pretty proud of her. She's doing a good job. But I work on her all the time, and her mother works on her. Please believe in God. For the young people, if you don't have any faith, if you're not willing to work towards having faith, you're going to be a sucker for the Democrat liberal order. Because without faith, there's no republicanism.
Mhm.
That's where we went wrong in the first place. That's why they got control of our schools. They called it the progressive education. So here we are. Even West Point's progressive now. That's my big takeaway from this podcast.
Mhm.
We might have to call this Communist West Point. Then she'll really be in trouble, Captain
Yeah,
Bannon.
then I'll never be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
It's really great to have you here. We actually would like to keep going with Maureen because I enjoy talking to her. We built a relationship. We didn't, either one of us, we knew who each other was.
Mhm.
You knew who I was
Mhm.
before you started coming up.
Mhm.
We didn't have a relationship. And it was really one of the true joyful outcomes of the campaign is to meet some people that you actually can have a real relationship with, which I'm going to assure you on these campaigns doesn't happen in every relationship. Some of these things don't work out the way you want them to because everybody comes in with their own ideas and everybody's, going like a bat out of hell to get what they want done. But for some reason, I'm aligned with Captain Bannon's worldview in large part, and we enjoy talking. So we're going to try to keep doing this, correct?
Mhm.
Right.
But via Skype. I don't know the next time you're going to get
Well, the
me
next time she'd have to.
in Minnesota.
It's
It won't be
wintertime.
Yeah, it won't be that.
Too
Maybe
bad
in
we-
the spring.
Too bad we don't have a traveling roadshow. We could go take a vacation down in Florida where this lady hangs around. See, look at the smile on his face. He's thinking,
I think when it's freezing cold here, you guys should come down to Florida. I'm not coming up here. I make myself very clear. I am not coming to Minnesota in the
you know what
winter.
I'm going to do when I get up in the morning and it's 8 below zero and we got 3 feet of snow.
Mhm.
I'll send you pictures.
And I'll send you pictures from the sunny state of
There'll
Florida.
be no captions. There'll be no commentary.
It won't be hurricane season anymore in Florida.
That's right. You got to get through the rest of this hurricane season.
Mhm.
I'm so glad you're here. To all the War Room listeners and viewers, it's my pleasure and honor to be with Captain Bannon here with you. And remember, please support the War Room. Please support all the advertisers. Please understand that keeping this alternative media going is a full-time blood sport. Takes a lot of money, a lot of intensity. There's a lot of advertisers that go out of their way to
Mhm.
risk their futures to support the war room because they believe in the ideology of republicanism. So please, when you're making a choice, you vote every day with your money. Try to take a look at what the war room is aligned with and support those advertisers, because that's how you support the content. That's how you support Maureen Bannon. That's how you support Stephen K. Bannon, so that he can come back out of this political dungeon that he's in at the end of this month, 4 or 5 days before the election, right? 5 days before? 4 days before?
He gets out the 29th.
Okay, 6 days, but something like that. I can't wait to hear what he's going to have up here. He'll be throwing smoke for sure, but we got to support the war room. We got to, we the American citizens, there's nobody coming. We're the cavalry. So take a look at who's supporting the war room, and please support those advertisers so that war room can broaden its scope, broaden getting out the word. We have to convert victims of the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, when the bad guys took over. We have to convert those people to the concept of self-governance, and that's what the war room is all about. Maureen, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me here.
Thanks. It was great. I'm going to look forward to the next by Skype.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner, thanks very much for
Thank you.
coming in. We appreciate it. We'll see you all soon again. Thank you.
Bye.